What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video, and in this video we're going to be breaking down one tip for every single agent in Valorant, and we're just gonna jump right into it. But before we do, the GameLeap website is the one-stop shop. If you want to master any of these agents, we got in-depth Radiant VOD reviews, advanced tips and tricks, and much more on the GameLeap website. And right now we have a special 50% off sale, so don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now, kicking it off with the first agent on our list, we have none other than Raze. Now, with Raze, velocity matters a lot when it comes to paint shells, as paint shells will always explode after 3 seconds, but when throwing paint shells, it will maintain your current speed. So what I mean by that is if you're trying to throw all the way from A main on bind all the way to heaven, it's gonna explode before it even gets there. But if you do want to get a grenade all the way in there, you can actually propel yourself forward with a blast pack, and that momentum will propel it all the way to heaven because it will keep your momentum. This is a really important thing to know just in general about Raze, but try to experiment a little bit with your own velocity and the velocity of your paint shells, and you're gonna come up with some pretty sick rollouts and bounces on Raze. Now moving on to the next character that we got for you is none other than Breach, and a specific tip that you might not know is that Breach's ultimate can allow you to go slightly up on high ground, which can be useful in all sorts of different places. But one thing that you can do is actually behind a sage wall, you can push up to it, jump and ult, and it will actually propel you on top of the wall, which is a pretty cool little tip for Breach, because then you're already there, you're ready to do damage, and you got up on the high ground in a way that most players wouldn't actually expect at all. Now moving on to the next agent that we got for you on the list is none other than Phoenix, and what you're going to be doing on Phoenix in this tip is using your hot hands aggressively to challenge an alternate angle. If you've ever watched Noted, shout out to Noted, you see him do this all the time, where he will throw hot hands through one angle and push up aggressively and challenge the other instead of having two people holding across. You could do this, for instance, on bind on defense mid A. You could throw hot hands through like the right angle and challenge the left angle so that enemies can't swing you or wrap around, and you can focus all your attention on one angle. Plus you could be pushing up more aggressively and holding an angle that enemies won't expect you to be, because it's typically not safe, but you made it a lot safer by using your hot hands to block off a potential swing. Now moving on to the next agent that we got for you in this video is none other than Viper. Now, people know how to use Toxic Screen on attack, but when it comes to defense, people just are sometimes at a loss with Toxic Screen. Now, what I would highly suggest is actually do a mix-up, sometimes using it to set up your team for an aggressive play, and other times saving it for retaking, because honestly, Toxic Screen is like the best retake ability in the entire game. And if you want to play a retake strategy, oftentimes you could say, hey, we're gonna retake this round, let's wait, and if enemies push onto your site, give it up easier, we can retake with my Toxic Screen when the enemies take that point. That is honestly one of the coolest ways to use Toxic Screen and Viper in general, and I really hope that these newest buffs on Viper make her good enough to see some pro play, because I really want to see some pro Viper play. Now, moving on to Jett, I'm gonna tell you a secret to climb at a low elo with Jett, and all you have to do is call out an aggressive dash updraft shotgun play, call that to your team before the round even starts, and execute it just as is. What I mean by that is, let's say that back on the bind example, you're pushing bind mid A, right? And there's someone that always controls U-Haul. Well, if your team doesn't have to worry about U-Haul and instead they're committing to the right side, and you know that there's always someone that plays there, you could right off the bat run out, dash updraft, and easily shut down someone with the shorty that's holding U-Haul, especially because they're usually setting up abilities and things like that, and your teammates are going to be swinging the other side because they already know you're going to do this because you called it out. Very powerful thing, and I guarantee you this is going to give you so many damn kills. I mean, it even works in high rank, so in low rank it's pretty much going to be unstoppable, honestly. Now moving on to the next character that we got for you on the list is none other than Omen. Now, an Omen tip that I got for you is a positional one. The best thing that you should be doing on Omen is actually positioning in a way, specifically on defense, where you can convert on your paranoia. Specifically, paranoia really operates in a straight long line. So holding the longer areas on the map are the best places you could hold if you want to make aggressive plays with your paranoia, because using it down a longer hallway or sight line can really give enemies no good option as far as countering is concerned. They're just gonna get hit by it and they can't turn around like with other flashes, so it's gonna lead to some pretty easy kills. Now, another thing that you should know about Omen's paranoia is it's really hard to be using it as you're going in with your team, right? Because you could easily paranoia them on accident. So it's actually best to set your allies up through a wall. As your allies are pushing in or your duelist is pushing in, try to paranoia through a wall from an adjacent angle and paranoia the area in front of them as they move in. Make sure that you don't accidentally hit them, and that's a great way to set up executes with Omen and a teammate, duelist, or some other agent. Now, moving to the next character that we got for you on the list is none other than Reyna. Now, an important mistake that a lot of players are making on Reyna is misunderstanding their Devour ability at all, because they don't utilize the health that it gives them. And let me kind of explain what I mean here. You see, Devour only lasts for 25 seconds, and when you have full armor and health, often it's better to force an engagement rather than give enemies 50 HP worth of free damage. But a lot of times, Reynas will get that first kill, and then they'll play far too slow, and eventually their Devour will run out, they will lose that precious buffer of health they have, and now instead of taking an advantage team fight or an advantage engagement, they are simply setting themselves up to fail. And basically, because they didn't play in a way that would force an engagement, they played far too slow and passively, they are actually now at a big time disadvantage. Now, moving on to the next agent that we got for you on the list is none other than Sova. Now, what you should always be doing on Sova is using your abilities piece by piece to flush sight control. And what I mean by that, I can best describe with an example. So let's say you push up to the default on a site, right? Well, you as Sova, you have multiple ways to gather information. You can throw your drone out and check one cubby. You can sonic arrow and check multiple other areas. You can throw your darts in other areas and punish enemies that could be there. You see, slowly and surely, you're checking areas piece by piece by piece. Even information that you don't really know, you're slowly plotting it in. Like, imagine a map that was like darked out, right? Sova is lighting the way, and doing this piece by piece makes it so much easier for your duelist to take ground. And that's why Sova combos so damn well with another duelist like Phoenix, because you can essentially clear multiple areas, and that duelist doesn't have to worry about those areas when he's trying to take sight control. He doesn't have to flash around every single corner. He doesn't have to peek every single corner with intent, and it really allows him to hyper focus and be far more effective. So definitely keep that in mind. Use your abilities with intent. Don't just throw them out. Don't just shoot a rollout recon arrow for no reason. Do things with intent and use it to take sight control piece by piece. Now, we talked about playing for retake with Viper's Toxic Screen, but by far the best ultimate to retake a point with is Killjoy's ultimate. And it's so strong for retakes actually that you should actually be talking to your teammates pre-round and say, hey, we're just going to give up sight right now. Just back off, don't engage. If enemies rush you, just back off and we're gonna play for retake. Then once the enemies plant that spike down, you can stick your ultimate in a way that's gonna force them away. And when your ultimate is about 35% to go off, not before, because if you peek out too close or too soon, enemies might be waiting around to get some picks on you. But when it's almost activated, you and your team can push on and take all the power angles around the spike that enemies are flush from, and you will have a pretty solid idea of where enemies probably are pushed to. Combo this with a couple of smokes that block up enemy LOS, and you have a recipe that really sets the enemy up in a terrible situation where they planted that spike, but now the pressure is on them and they gave up all their powerful position in the process. Very powerful way to use the Killjoy ultimate, and it's being used like this in pro play, so definitely try it in your games, but make sure that you calm this strategy beforehand so your allies just don't all just die instantly and you're just trying to retake by yourself. That's not gonna work at all. Now, moving on to the next agent that we got for you on the list is none other than Brimstone. Now, the biggest tip that I could give you honestly on Brimstone that's not a general smoke based one is honestly, with the new Stim Beacon buffs, the Spectre plus the Stim Beacon does a pretty damn decent Phantom impression. This is why if one person on your team can't buy, typically the Brimstone is the one that should be downgrading more than anyone else, because if he has that Stim Beacon, it does a pretty good comparable upgrade impression, and it's far better to put like the Vandal in the hands of your Phoenix rather than your Brimstone, who is primarily just a utility guy. And then of course, having that Stim Beacon, I mean, not just with the Spectre, even something like a stinger, your time to kill is so damn fast. I mean, seriously. Anyways, moving on to the next agent that we got for you on the list. For all 2 of you that are still playing her, we got Sage. Now, a big problem with players playing Sage, especially after the nerf that really places the wall when it's already pre-broken, a lot of people will still be playing Sage in the old way, where right off the bat, or pretty soon right off the bat, they will just wall up like mid-split defense, right? The problem with Sage wall is the second that you plant it, enemies are just gonna break it and rotate off, and that means it doesn't get almost any value. You're spending all that money for basically a little bit of ammo, you get a tiny bit of information, but not really, and then they're just gonna rotate off, and that's pretty much the end of it. The situation that you should really be using Sage walls for is like later in the round when the enemy is playing like long, right? And they have the spike down, they have line of sight of the spike. You can use your Sage wall to block off not only their line of sight, but their push, and then you could start committing to a defuse. Not only are they gonna have to break the wall solo, but then they don't know LOS, they don't know if you're sticking it, they have to push through. It just creates a whole bunch of problems. And if you're playing Sage still right now, you should be trying to use that wall much later in the game, because the longer you wait to use it, the more individual value it can have, especially if the enemy is not playing around it at all. Now moving on to the last but certainly not least agent in the entire video, it's Cypher. And the best tip that I got for you on Cypher is, in general, it is actually incredibly powerful to mix up what you're playing. Now I know on some maps, specifically like Split on B, a Cypher playing there on defense is pretty much always the case, because it's just so damn powerful for Cypher with the one-ways and the ability for you to play back a sight, have that high-up camera. It's just so powerful. But on a lot of maps, Cypher really gets tons of value by being unpredictable, especially in ranked play. If enemies don't respect you as Cypher, or they just assume that you're playing another site, they can often get caught up into a trap that just gets you a free kill, especially like a map like Ascent, where Cypher is very good on both A and B. You can move back and forth, and on top of that, you should not only be mixing up where you're holding, but also what trips you use. You see, there's a whole bunch of different trips that you can use for certain things, and always just adding or changing up where your trips are can make it to where the enemy's always guessing. Sometimes they'll even waste utility trying to clear trips, and your trips are moved, and that could be a great thing as a mix-up to shut down an enemy and get some free value. But mastering any of these agents is so damn easy if you go to the GameLeap website in the links down below, because we got Tanner, our Radiant God, doing our agent courses so that you can learn every single agent and master them with step-by-step examples and instructions so that you can easily climb the ladder and become immortal and beyond. And with the 50% off sale right now, don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to become absolutely nutty at the game of Valorant. But that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for coming by. I'm Coach Mills, and of course, until next time.